is Nicole. I'm a producer for the Remembering Them podcast. The podcast is a platform for people to share stories and memories of their loved ones who have passed away. The podcast was created in memory of Dad, Bob Cecil. May he rest in peace. Your host, Mark, Ryan, and Luke acknowledge the rich history and importance of storytelling within the indigenous culture.
My name is Jorgi Skeen, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet here today. Today we're meeting in Meanjin, and those traditional owners are the Yagara and Turrbal people. And I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge my people, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and extend that acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening in today.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. Well, the day has finally come where it's just me solo. Unfortunately, we weren't able to line up our calendars for this chat today. Luke and Ryan are both busy. And as regular listeners would know, that when one of a co-host is missing, then the people that can attend have free reign to tell our listeners the excuse why the both of them can't, or one of them can't be here today, in this case both of them. And luckily it's just me, so Ryan and Luke advised me that they weren't able to attend this catch up today because they were doing tango lessons. So the both of them have recently partnered up and are doing tango lessons. So I think in a previous episode, Luke, it might have been, was doing salsa lessons and has switched over to tango, and him and Ryan have partnered up. And unfortunately, the times clashed when they're doing a lesson today. So miss you both. Hopefully the lesson goes well and you're progressing in your tango. And we look forward to seeing some proof with some videos that we may or may not release to our listeners on the page. Let's jump straight into the clues for our guests today, where they're from. Obviously, the boys aren't here to guess, so we'll leave it to you at home. So this will be a fairly short introduction, given that I don't have some real-time feedback or response. So the first clue from where our guest is from, as always, play along at home, or you're the only ones that are playing along at home without the other two with me today. First clue. It's the first city to legalize, we're after a city today. Our guest is from the first city to legalize recreational cannabis. It was amongst the first major cities in the world to legalize recreational marijuana, becoming a model for cannabis legislation globally. So that's your first clue. I'll let you pause if you want to have a think. Second clue for today, this city claims to be the birthplace of the cheeseburger. The Humpty Dumpty Drive-in trademarked the term in 1935. Again, I'll let you pause there and have your guesses. Hopefully you've got it by now. I can safely say if Luke and Ryan weren't here, they would not have it. And we're moving on to the third clue. Third clue is this city has one of the largest concentrations of breweries in the US. So we are in the US and host the Great American Beer Festival, the largest beer competition in the world. So hopefully you have guessed correctly. The city that we are in is Denver. So Denver's a vibrant city where urban energy meets outdoor adventure, nestled at the base of the Rocky Mountains with easy access to hiking, skiing, and scenic drives. Known for its thriving art scene, diverse neighborhoods, and dynamic economy, it blends historic charm with modern innovation. Our guest today is a social media manager and poet currently writing her debut book, Psychopaths Are Sexy. Interesting title, which explores healing and breaking free from cycles of abuse. Living nomadically and based primarily in Colorado, she spent the last 14 years traveling solo across the US while building a community network to support survivors of domestic abuse, drawing on her own powerful journey of survival, freedom, and advocacy. Our guest today from Denver, Colorado is Rayven Libre Veritas. So welcome to the Remembering Them podcast officially, Rayven. Thank you very much for joining me today, just me.
Thank you so much. I had no idea that we'd be here after all this time of grief and loss to come to this kind of conclusion and get to talk about things like this. So I love it. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm super excited to have you on. We've been back and forwards a little bit over socials talking about different things, and it looks like hopefully if we can line things up, we'll have you back for an in-person when you're traveling over here. That's really exciting. But if you like to start today by telling us about the person that we're going to be talking about and sharing stories and memories of.
Absolutely. Yeah. My grandmother was still is the most significant person in my life, I think, that influenced the way that I see the world. And her name is Rickel Katharina Badrian Nichenbrugge.
Okay, I won't try and get that right. Yeah.
We call her Kiki for short.
Kiki, perfect. That's easy for
Kiki,
me. Great.
love her.
Let's stick with Kiki.
Yeah.
And what happened to her? What took her away from you?
Yeah. I mean, it seemed like it was breast cancer that started to spread throughout her body, and it became really painful for her in a very short period of time. It was like she had discovered cancer, and then within 3 months, she had passed away. And so I think that no one was really prepared for how quickly she deteriorated. And that definitely added into the grief aspect of it. But at the same time, there were so many people surrounding her. I'm talking like 14 plus cousins and
Wow.
all of her children, so she was very much supported during that time. And she was even trying to send out cards to everybody because she knew her time was coming, which is a beautiful thing, I think, too, when you age and you kind of know what to expect.
Yeah. So, and the support network, were they close by or really spread out? Is that why she was sending, those messages out to people?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're kind of all over the states. So she's in Delaware. She passed away in Delaware, lived there her whole life. And then we had cousins and family in North Carolina, which is where I was at the time. I think some people in California and Florida. So she was just trying to say her final goodbyes. And she was just incredible at capturing emotion. And I think that she wanted people to have some like physical reminder of what she had said and her beliefs and how she felt towards people. So she was writing cards in her last days. And even, I think I talked to her on the phone not even a week before she passed. So still very energetic, which I hear is a big thing, especially right before you pass.
Yeah.
So
And on that point, how would you describe her? You just started to give a little bit away there, but how would you describe her as a person to someone that had never met her before?
she had a nickname, Saint Rickle. She, like, Mother Teresa has nothing on this woman. I'm not
Okay.
She was so kind, so generous. She had something good to say about every single person in the world. Like, she could watch criminals doing the worst things on the news and still think in the back of her mind, like, oh, their poor mother, who raised this child and had so much love to pour into them. And how that there is love at the center of everyone. She kind of believed that. And oh my gosh, just so generous. She would work herself to the bone to make other people happy, which I think is something that came down from generations, especially in women. But she was the life of the party simultaneously, which is crazy for someone to be so kind and so giving, but also like the planner of every single thing. So she would throw the most amazing parties for all of us grandkids and celebrating graduation parties. Like, she was just such a sweet person. And from her upbringing, you would never have assumed that.
She had a tough upbringing?
Yeah. So she was born from a Dutch family in the Dutch East Indies. So when Indonesia was being colonized by the Dutch, and born on the island of Timor in 1931, I want to say. And then by the age of 10, she was one of the prisoners of war in the concentration camps that the Japanese were holding during World War II. And my history is not my strong suit. But she was there for 4 years. So from the age 10 to 14, which I just can't even imagine what that's like. And without her family around her, she was the only person plucked from her family to go. And apparently she was taken by mistake. I don't really know if it's possible, but apparently. And she would tell stories, not often. You'd really have to dig and kind of ask those questions. I think it was kind of locked away in her memory. talking about, eating bugs off the floor and how everyone was starving. She actually had a diary at one point that she would sew into her pillowcase at night so people wouldn't find it.
Oh, on the
And
inside kind of thing?
yes,
Or,
inside the
yeah.
pillowcase
Wow.
itself. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the diary still exists to this day. One of these days, I'm going to try to get my hands on it and try to write her story. But it's just incredible. And she had seen so much suffering. The statistics had said like there were maybe 800 people released out of 7,000 prisoners. And her and then her eventual husband were also in the camp. So it's just crazy that they both had that insane experience. And he was actually tortured terribly because of his like friendships and I guess the dynamics that he had made. And that's how it goes in a camp, where everyone's guilty, I guess, of something. So it seems. So she was just alone and starving and trying to survive. And the fact that she had seen so much of like the negative side of humanity, and then to become such a kind and generous and loving person despite that, I've still don't really understand how that's possible. But I feel like I've used her story, and through generations it almost feels like we kind of have to thrive for them, and I think that's a big aspect of grieving the loss of other people too. It's like, well, they were taken too early, they didn't get to live out their full life, or they were still in bondage of their own psychological limitations, and we don't have to be. And I think it's beautiful.
That kindness aspect and seeing the good in people and nearly everything, is that something that you a lesson that you learned from her, and are there other lessons that you'll remember her by that she taught you or that you took from her life?
Oh my gosh. I think it's just the unconditional love, because I would love to talk about my upbringing in another video. But I think when you're raised to be very independent and self-sufficient, and there's not really anyone you can rely on, when you do experience that kind of love, that it's like all encompassing, so kind, so calm, so secure, there is no replacement for it. And you're going to spend the rest of your life searching for something like that. She did teach me, how to have empathy, I think. I don't know. That's something, I don't know if it's taught or nature nurture, and it's kind of the topic of the book that I'm writing right now. But had ingrained empathy in me of animals and anyone lesser than perceived that way, anyone who's in more challenging circumstances, that you never kick someone when they're down and things like that, because you have no idea what's really going on and what they've had to overcome to even get to this point where they're still potentially destructive, So she was really just this beacon of light in the world. And I've never met anyone who compared in that way. Do you have any experiences of people just pure light, pure goodness?
I think we've had a lot of guests that are on that have been on, that have spoken about loved ones, and it's the old cliche adage that it's always the good ones that go first. And
Fair.
uh, I don't know. I think, and this is probably unfair to some really, really good people that I've met, but the
Oh,
ones that stick out are the podcast guests, or the people that guests have been speaking about their loved ones. And it's beautiful to see just that pure joy and the smile, similar to yourself now, that they have when they're talking about these people. We had one on recently, just very similar message. This person was just so good. And this was her spouse that unfortunately passed away. That
oh,
nobody had a bad word to say about him. He was
wow.
it was almost, she was saying that he was a tradie, like a blue collar worker, but so not the stereotypical. He was just so
Mhm.
kind, and he didn't swear, and no one had a bad word to say about him. So those type of people stick out in my mind. And
Well,
sounds like Kiki was very, very similar.
what's so funny though is you can come across those people and others around you might not even perceive it that way, like
Yeah, that's true.
I had gone for her funeral, which is a whole different conversation, but even the people around me, when they were speaking about her best memories or fun memories with her, they weren't saying anything like what was in my mind. So I don't even know if I just experienced a whole nother side to her, or if I just kind of gave her more space to express that side of her rather than the servitude aspect, which I think was heavy, you know, for her.
Yeah.
The
I
people
guess, yeah, it is certainly an aspect of perception because I know, you know, for example, this podcast was started in memory of Dad, and I know there are people that would certainly say he was the kindest man and he, you know, did anything for everyone, which is all true.
Mhm.
But I guess it's just that perception when you're, you know, living with them and you see the good, bad, and all the rest of it. You don't
Yeah, human.
necessarily have
Yeah.
that, yeah, have that description. Speaking of the memories of Kiki, that you have some of those amazing ones. Do you have a favorite or one that springs to mind?
This is a paid partnership with BetterHelp. Hey Luke and Ryan, life gets heavy sometimes, especially when grief hits. For me, that weight often shows up as anxiety.
Yeah, it's not always one big thing. Sometimes it's just life piling up, work, relationships, trying to hold it all together. Suddenly, I'm anxious and don't know why.
Totally. I used to think anxiety meant panic attacks, but for me, it's more like overthinking every choice or feeling like I'm never doing enough.
And it can even hit on good days. Out of nowhere, I'm spiraling over things that haven't even happened yet.
It's easy to feel alone in it, but you're not.
That's why we're talking about our paid partner, BetterHelp.
BetterHelp connects you with credentialed therapists who can help manage anxiety and more.
Most people go to BetterHelp for anxiety, and 69% feel better after just 6 weeks.
Getting started is simple. Fill out a quick questionnaire and get matched with a therapist. If it's not a fit, you can switch at any time.
Their support team is super responsive, and with over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 Trustpilot rating, it's a platform you can count on.
So let BetterHelp help manage your anxiety so it doesn't manage you.
Click the link below or go to betterhelp.com/rememberingthem for 10% off your first month.
I don't know about favorites yet, but the first one that comes to my mind, which I think is the beginning of like understanding the depth of her empathy, is that she had a pet turkey at one point when she was living in Indonesia, and she cared for this thing every single day, you know, coming home from school, feeding it, all that, and loved it, developed such a strong bond. And then Thanksgiving came around and she was like, "Where's my turkey?"
Oh no.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. This is how I express discomfort, is laughter. No, but she, yeah, turkey was on the dinner table.
So someone, who was it? Who
Her
was it?
dad.
Oh no.
But her family, again, at that time, like just didn't really recognize animals that way, you know, and I think still so many people don't. Whatever was in her blood, she passed down to me, and I will cry over a tree bleeding sap. A true tree hugger. I don't know. And so her depth of emotion towards animals was just so beautiful to see. And I feel like she extended that same kind of love and care. And like she had to, I think she felt responsible for everyone's happiness, which is difficult to be in those shoes, you know, but beautiful for everyone around her, I'm sure, me included.
It's amazing. Is there a quote or a saying or something that she would say to you that reminds you of her?
Well, she would say phrases in Dutch, like "ik vind je lief." But honestly, she would take on the things that my grandfather said. So she and him were like the dynamic duo, the glue of the team. And, you know, we had spoken about baseball earlier before the podcast episode. Sorry about it. To everyone who's tuning in. My uncles, so their children were, I don't want to say major league, but played in like the national level. I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
Huge
Maybe
level.
yeah. Very at a high level, let's just say that. Maybe a
High
division
level.
under. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they went on to teach high level. And so there's actually a field named after, in Delaware, there's a field named after my uncle. And it was beautiful because that was kind of like in memory of both my grandfather and my grandmother, also like the energy that they poured into their kids, like everything was sacrificed for their success. And it just goes for generations, you know? And I think that's, again, something that I'm trying to do with the book that I'm writing is just speak her love through my words and through who I am. And even at her funeral, we had like dinner afterwards with all family members. It was huge at like a hibachi, one of those big style places. Anyway, when we were sharing memories and it got to me and I was the last one to speak and I'm just crying before you start speaking, but how if only each of us were 1% more like her, like the world would be infinitely better, right? Because how many people do you impact on a daily basis? And with your podcast, you're reaching people internationally, you know? People are listening to these stories and they can take on the traits and the lessons learned from these individuals. Like that is just so beautiful.
Thank you, thank you. Humbly say that, and maybe this, I'm trying to relate it back to Kiki, your grandmother, as well, in that, and maybe the way that you and the people around you live your lives. I think if we can impact just one person or help one person that may listen to our humble, small little podcast, then we've done our, we've done our job or the purpose of it. So, would you say that would be similar to how you've taken the kindness aspect and treating people with compassion, lessons that you learned from your grandmother?
Totally. I find this interesting balance because I've experienced some obstacles and hardships that I feel like I've become kind of angry with. And I have to teeter-totter between like, well, I want to be the good that the world needs, regardless of how challenging it is to do that. But yeah, if I could impact one person positively, it would make my whole life worth it, honestly. Like that's how I feel too. Sometimes when I'll feel kind of like, I call it espresso depresso. When I'm feeling like down in the dumps about something, a lot of times I'll go to donate blood because in my mind, it's like something tangible that I can do. And that directly can save 1 to 3 people, and I think that my entire life up until that point is worth it just for that one donation, for example.
Yeah,
so I'm
that makes sense.
I feel like serving others is not only how we're remembered, I mean, grief podcast, and healing but also how the world can be better through the mistakes that were made previously. And I feel like I kind of owe it to her to end the cycles that I think that she was stuck in. As I said, all those amazing traits about her, I do think that she probably in a way also suffocated under the weight of expectations from others in order to constantly be that person. Like, who did she turn to? And I've asked myself that question after she passed away and I never got any answers. And it seemed like she was everyone's therapist, everyone's nurse. But I don't really know how she expressed herself. And there were a few conversations that we'd had of like our faith and spiritual beliefs. But outside of that, I don't know if anyone had met her on that level because it sounded like no one asked before. And I think a lot of people go through life playing a certain role without recognizing their whole human experience, that you are meant to feel all of these things. You can feel grateful and disappointed at the same time, or you can experience like grief and loss and anger, but also a sense of like relief. And I think, I don't know if anyone's talked about that one specifically on this podcast, but it's complicated, isn't it?
It definitely is. They're just talking about those things that I guess the conversations or the answers that you didn't get from her, and now she's not here to extract those answers, I guess. Were there things that you started to ask, post diagnosis or even prior to that, and then secondary to that, what are the types of things that you sort of wish you asked and talked to her about?
Mm-hmm. Gosh, what's really odd is I almost felt like there was more freedom to relate to her after she passed. Maybe that's selfish to think that my angle now is like more encompassing or something, but it almost felt like I could talk to her without getting on the phone. I can just speak. And at the time, I just chose to believe, because I think your beliefs are chosen, that that my love would just make its way to her, and that my apologies, like, I think that's the biggest thing for me. There wasn't any question that I would ask her. I think she lived a good life, and I think she would say she lived a good life, even if, certain things didn't go well for her. But sorry, I'm like blanking.
Do you think it was,
Thinking too
I'm
deeply.
wondering, do you think it was generational? Because I can somewhat
Mm,
relate to that, I guess my relationship and I can't talk for Luke. He was maybe a little bit more um, forthcoming with those conversations with Dad.
mm,
I didn't necessarily have those conversations whilst he was here, and certainly now, especially with the podcast and talking about him, I'm hoping that he's getting those messages of conversations that we didn't have whilst he was here.
yeah.
Does that make sense with
Yeah,
similar thing?
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the positive impact is still working. And I mean, I'm so interested. What made you start this podcast? What was the initial, purpose for it for you?
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear if that's a similar
Yeah.
journey into you with the book. So some people would have heard this before. So basically, it was a period where Dad passed away during COVID, unfortunately. So there was situations, where and I know it was different in the States where I couldn't get back. I was interstate, so it was border closures and all the rest of it. So that was just an added layer. I think I'd struggled with things for a good 12 months, at least a good 12 months, in terms of just not talking about it or letting out those emotions. I'd lent pretty heavily on Ryan, and he knows this because he'd lost his two good friends. How to deal with things, and I remember two specific occasions where I don't have to go into those details, maybe in person, but people have heard them before with my episodes, but where publicly I just broke down and lost it. And those were at events where you wouldn't expect it wasn't like a sad event or anything. It was like one was a
Right.
sporting occasion, one was a bit, a business networking
Oh.
event. So it was really like, oh God, what am I doing here? So it was kind of like, well, I need to do something about this. And I just, and maybe, in conversation with Ryan, it was just, well, let's just start talking about it. And I know that there's other people close to us that have experienced grief, and maybe they're
Yeah.
willing to share. So we just started, Ryan and I, sharing our stories and our experiences, and again with that hope that it might help someone else. And then we expanded it to friends and family, people that we knew, and they were forthcoming as well, and found it almost therapeutic to share those stories. And then we thought, oh, okay, well, let's just cast the net out and see if there's other people that want to come on and share their stories. And it just amazes us now that people like yourself are willing to come on and speak about their experiences, and again, in hope that it just helps one person. And one person, seeks solace, and it helps them with their grief journey by hearing someone else's because they can relate to it, then that's absolutely a win. And we may never hear about it, but we just hope that it does impact that one person. So long way of asking, is that what you're doing with your book as well?
I think it's the exploration of like layers of psychology, layers of grief. That's kind of what the book is about, is like a journey through my grief experience, to help someone else out of a situation of domestic abuse and recognize that there is someone like holding your hand through each
Sure.
step. Like, I think the situation that I was in, I lost my grandmother at the same time that I started going through my divorce. And so
Right.
at this point, I lost my house. My best friends ended up being like wrapped into the manipulation. And so I didn't have a support system. I started uncovering things about my family, especially while my grandmother was becoming ill. Like the behavior of her kids started changing towards her, and that was really disturbing for me to see. And so I was at rock bottom during that entire experience. It felt like my whole world imploded, and I'm simultaneously so incredibly grateful for it because I've been able to rebuild brick by brick of like what served me, what doesn't serve me moving forward. And I feel like a lot of people, no matter what kind of grief you're going through, doesn't it feel like your life is kind of destroyed as you knew it? Like it's not ever going to be the same. And it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where you find your strength. But let me ask you this, what do you think is so difficult to the individual experiencing grief and also to like the community as well, and why it makes people so uncomfortable?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one that we've, I guess, touched on a number of times with different guests in this podcast. And it's interesting because you have guests that have come on and they're just so passionate about it, and they've become, grief coach. We've had a lot of grief coaches that have come on and spoken about their journey and how they're helping people in their community, because they just want to. It's a part of life. Like it's going to happen to all of
Right.
us. Just we don't know when, unfortunately, and that's the nature of life and death. And I think it's something that we're trying to break through, so we can have those seemingly uncomfortable conversations. But when you have them, they're really not. They can
I
be.
know, right?
Yeah.
Most of the
It's
time you're met with compassion and understanding. I don't know what we're
absolutely,
saying.
yeah. And it's interesting. We also had, and there's so many different layers as well. You have family members, and then maybe friends. We've had a lady from, actually, I'm pretty sure she's from Denver, Colorado.
No way.
Yeah, she was talking about, she does a lot of work with grief in the workplace and how to speak to, employees and managers and that type of thing. And she's had other layers of grief in her life as well. So I think, if I could connect you two, that'd be amazing. I think you'd have a lot to talk about. So I think there's different aspects that we just need to be more comfortable talking about. And maybe it's a situation where the people that are uncomfortable talking about it haven't necessarily experienced, a sense of grief, or been on a journey with someone that is close to them. Maybe it's someone far removed and they haven't necessarily experienced, deep grief with a parent or a sibling or a child or whatever it might be. Maybe that's the difficulty. But yeah, as I've said, we've had a lot of people on, and it's actually not a difficult conversation. And we've gone into just chats with people where, unfortunately, it's been suicide, and there's been cancers and all different types, accidents, all different types of death and grief following it. And we've gone into those discussions thinking, oh, this is going to be really heavy. How are we going to get through this, or how's the guest going to get through this? But it's actually been quite a beautiful conversation, I think, because we're trying to focus on the stories and memories of that person, rather than, sure, we'll certainly talk about, how did Kiki pass, and the cancer and that took it, but that's not the focus. It's more, honoring the legacy and memories of that person.
The Remembering Them podcast is supported by My Legacy Message. How do you want to be remembered? My Legacy Message provides a service that delivers a personalized keepsake video to your loved ones, often as a surprise after you pass. My Legacy Message, be remembered.
Yeah.
Oh man. Has your idea of faith shifted from before and after your experiences, or even the podcast? Has it evolved?
Yeah, we've learned things that I would like to say that the three of us are fairly open with our beliefs, and we're quite open-minded when it comes to spirituality and different religions and everything else, and everything in between, no matter what your beliefs. I think, well, Luke and I were brought up Roman Catholic, Ryan not so much, but then we've had, after speaking to people on this podcast, we've had mediums on who have connected, with spirit. And so I think, I don't know that it's shifted completely, but it's just probably opened up a lot more, if I can say that. We're certainly open before, but even more so now that we've had these conversations with people, and we've experienced, whether you believe it or not, if you're listening to this, connection to spirit, and it's, I think it's helped with, especially in my situation with losing dad. It's helped connect to spirit and explore those different things that are out there that maybe people are open to, maybe not. So I'd say if that answers your question. I don't think it's shifted, but I think it's just opened up a lot more. What about yourself? How about with your beliefs? Has that changed post grief, or opened up, or
So
closed off, or
evolved so much. I would consider myself atheist prior to her
Hmm,
passing. So
yeah,
it wasn't like I don't know what there is, that's agnostic, right? But it was like, no, there is no God, because at a very young age, having experienced some hardship, I kind of found out about Epicurean paradox on my own. Are you familiar with it?
no,
Okay, so it's this paradox that says God cannot be all three of these different traits at the same time, because one of them will kind of, what's the word? Cancel out one of the
right,
others. So it's the idea that God cannot be all knowing, all powerful, and all good
hmm,
at the same time. Because, like, if he was all good and all knowing, then how could he be defeated by the devil? Things like that.
sure, yep,
So it's
yep,
this like roundabout conversation that I had when I was younger. And I was like, okay, well, a God that just created us must have been bored. That's the
hmm,
only idea I could possibly think of, because, like, there is suffering in this world and there are challenges. And um, I was just angry, I think, with my circumstances at the time. So I grew up that way from age probably like 12 up until her passing. So that was what, 25? And then it's really wild, honestly. I downloaded a dating app, which I probably should not have been doing after my divorce. People push you to get back out there, and I was absolutely not ready. But I downloaded this dating app, and I ended up matching with a guy who was a piano teacher at Juilliard. And that's a famous like art school, huge
right,
deal. And I promise this will tie into
yeah,
my
okay,
and he was a piano teacher, and he had asked like what do you call it, performance I would play if I
yeah,
could learn. And I said Lightning Sonata by Tony Sikora. Have you heard the story of Tony
no,
Sikora? So he is a orthopedic surgeon. He was a doctor who was struck by lightning and then became obsessed with playing piano. Like, this song had struck him, and he became obsessed with this music that he didn't know how to recreate. He spent decades doing it. He was actually
yeah,
divorced
I think I
because
have
of,
heard, yeah, yep,
yeah. And the thing is, when he was struck by lightning, he had what is it called? A near-death experience, where he saw in his mind, what the afterlife was. And for him, I think he described it as like everything is full of love, kind of like atoms and cells, and
mm,
like there's
yep,
a flow of circuitry of love. That's what the main message is, I guess. And so I heard his story, and then I started researching all these other near-death experiences and how a lot of them describe them in the same ways. You're going through a tunnel. You might even see a bunch of TVs and like reflect on previous experiences that you had and see them from different points of view of like how other people reacted. You might meet people who passed on. I think that's the most common one. And I
yes,
should also mention, my mom was a hospice nurse. So she dealt with passing of people all of the time for so many years. So I kind of grew up with that normalization, I think, of death and dying. And I knew it was natural, and animals had passed. And so learning about all these near-death experiences, I started to question my beliefs. And I was like, maybe I don't need a God, but maybe I do believe that something else exists, that my love, for example, can still make its way across whatever plane of existence we're in. And then I started to change my thinking towards, electricity, for example, radio
hmm,
frequency. You can't see it, but it is there. It's always like possible to connect to, and then you'll visually see it if you were like connecting to electrodes. You can see the current of energy. So then I kind of shifted it that way, and I'm like, hey, I like that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I like to think that no matter where I go, I still have access to speaking with them, and that they could potentially see what I'm doing. And that, especially in a dream state,
mm,
experiencing things again, like after having PTSD, I can definitely go back in time to experience things that have happened in like vivid details that I don't even remember. And so I think that there's still a part of me, whether it's memory and what I would like to create, or whether that's like that access, that bridge where you can still connect with loved ones on the other side, even if you don't have control over it. I'm just more open to that idea now, I would say.
Yeah, look, I think it's certainly a theme that a reoccurring thing that a lot of people have come on and talked about, that being able to
Yeah.
connect with their loved one, whether it's a deep-seated, I speak to them, through a medium, or they are a medium, or whatever, or whether it's just signs and things that have happened to them. We've had a couple of from the UK, and Ryan will remember their names, but they just had things that happened in their life. They lost their son to a car accident, and there were just things that had happened that were just far beyond comprehension or chance. There's just no way these certain different events could have happened.
Right.
If there wasn't some sort of connection to spirit or whatever your beliefs are. So it's certainly something that's reoccurring, it keeps coming up, that people are able to connect with their loved ones that have passed. So yeah, I'm with you. I think we're all more open to that, I think. Not only with the conversations that we've been having with people, but even our own experiences. So it's an amazing thing. How do you stay connected to your grandmother now, and how do you preserve her legacy? I know that along with the layers that are in the book as well, because that was during a time in your life that you lent on that. But how do you preserve her today? How do you honor her?
I love the idea of legacy, because that's something big in our family, is we always wanted the legacy.
Yeah.
And they got it. Well, first of all, we always joked about, like, if she were to pass away, her sign is butterflies, and specifically blue butterflies. You've seen the blue morpho, that huge Brazilian gorgeous butterfly.
Yeah.
That's what I use now for my brand, for my media company. And in my mind, what it is that she transformed pain into something so beautiful, and that's the representation of it. And then the logo that I decided to use is with butterfly knives. Have you seen those before?
Yep.
Yeah. So the balisong knives, like in a shape of a butterfly, and calling that blue
Right.
morph. And so the idea is that you can experience things that could turn you calloused and could make you angry, and could turn you into the thing that you hate most in this world, and I think that's what happens a lot of times when something happens to you out of your control and it's someone else's will over yours. But how you have the ability to transform every experience into something positive. And that's really, I think, what she taught me, and what I want to carry for the rest of my life, and what I hope people see in me, is that no matter what you've experienced, you can overcome it. What is that? Indomitable human spirit, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah. Is there an end? So how old was your grandmother when she passed, and when did she pass? I don't think we covered off on that.
Yeah, she passed the day before her 92nd birthday.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which I'm just like, I don't know if anyone made a cake, but I would have started baking. She wouldn't have eaten it, but yeah, she made it to 91 and
91 and 364.
And that was 2023. Yeah. So 2 years has gone by. Gosh, wow.
Feels a lot, not too long ago, even though it has been a couple of years. It's flown past.
It feels like, honestly, a different lifetime for me. I just feel like a different person. I've gone through so many experiences, and I'm so kind of removed from it. But I think initially, when I dealt with those feelings of grief, it was mostly like anger towards the people around her who didn't see her the way that I did, and didn't think of this massive event, and huge life change. And it just makes me sad, honestly, that they didn't get to meet her at that same depth. How did you react in the beginning stages, I guess?
A lot of the obvious things that people feel, sadness. There was a I guess a moment of anger as well with what was going on in the world with COVID and not being able to physically
Oh,
be there like that. That was, I had a lot of layers going on, and I think that was part of the problem with bottling things up, that not expressing whatever that roller coaster of emotion was happening at that stage, not expressing it, not talking to people about it, and hence the outbursts, that built up pressure. So yeah, I think, and that's what we've learned as well, I guess, with talking to people, is there's just such a one of our guests explained it really nicely. She said, it's not, the grief journey isn't linear. There's no timeline. There's no, you should experience this and then this, and, in a couple of months or in 2 years' time, Raven, you should be feeling this way. It can
right.
hit you out of nowhere. It might be 5 years down the track. It might be when you're traveling to a certain spot in Australia and something reminds you of her. It can be completely random. So I think that's something that we've taken from all of the guests that we've spoken to, is just be kind to yourself, and at whatever stage in the grief journey you're at, particularly at the at the pointy end, when it just happened, and just let whatever it looks like and whatever you need, go out and get it. If it's you know if it's listening to music, if it's going out into nature, if it's going to one of those smash places and smashing up plates and
Oh
whatever else,
God,
go and
so
do that.
good. So good. Have you
Yeah.
done it?
I haven't, but there
Oh.
was I need to go, but I guess yeah, I haven't, but they look amazing.
And why, can I ask you why you felt that you didn't express your feelings in the beginning, at least, and why you had to bottle them up? Because I think also the difference in experience, as a woman, I think people are like, hey, cry on my shoulder, fine. But I
Yeah,
think it's be different for you.
yeah, definitely. I think it's a stereotypical male reaction, is
Mm.
to, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm a strong person, I don't need to talk to anyone, I'm fine, life carries on. um, and that was something that, Luke and I have spoken about it. We weren't necessarily brought up with being open and expressive when we are feeling things. So that was probably the juxtaposition that I had, certainly. And even I would say my two other brothers, Luke and Joe, are probably fairly similar. That we didn't, talk to each other. Well, forcibly we did, because we did an episode. The three of us, we sat down and like, okay,
I
let's
did
talk
hear
about
that one.
this.
Yeah. Very
Um,
different perspectives on grief. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, very different, because we're very different men as well. But I think that was probably my default at that time. And then, fortunately, just by dumb luck, by starting this podcast and talking to different people, I think it's probably evolved into a point where I'd probably handle it very, very differently today. If if someone, touch wood, unfortunately were to pass away quite close to me, I think I would handle it quite differently. Obviously, there would still be the usual grief stages, but I think I would probably handle it. I'm hoping I'd handle it a lot better.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember learning in high school where there was, what is it? Sadness, anger, depression, hopelessness, acceptance, in that
Mm.
order.
Yeah.
Always putting myself in that position, like, dang, why am I back at this
Yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Why am I depressed again?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so interesting how you're saying, like, healing is not linear, and it could be the smallest like trigger, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
tears, like, could be a song. I feel like music is very powerful
Music's so powerful.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
it could be a butterfly, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, she's with
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
Landing on my arm. Okay, we'll go
Yeah.
on this together. I remember asking God for signs of, like, it's she has become a symbol of yes for me. Like, the butterfly has become a symbol of yes, I'm on the right path. And I remember moving my entire life into my car after my divorce, and I traveled across the country, and I was like, am I doing the right thing? Because this is drastic,
Mm.
according to everyone in my life. No one, I can't speak to anyone about this experience. I was like, is this the right thing? I need a butterfly, a blue butterfly, but it can't just be like around or on my phone or something. I need it in my face, like, huge. And I was driving, I guess it was through California. I was heading up actually for a photo shoot. And it was this gorgeous, massive building, the entire building, one massive butterfly. And I was like, all right, Oma. Okay, Kiki.
Yeah, I see you. Yeah.
All right, I guess I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, I do feel because of this experience, because of her loss, it made me feel more confident in myself, right? Like when someone passes away who you've, I don't want to say relied on heavily, but that was your source of safety and comfort and protection even, if you don't have them anymore, I think it feels very like you're very raw to the world. But at the same time, you're forced to develop a tough skin and you're forced to develop new coping mechanisms. And I think that transformation is really beautiful. Now I feel safer in my own skin and I feel more loved and more protected than how I felt even when she was alive, which I think is interesting, you know?
It's beautiful that you've taken that, post her passing, and on that point, is there any advice that you would give to people, given your experience with her post her passing in the last couple of years, that you would give to people that are through whatever stage of grieving they're in at the moment?
I would just say, because everyone is so different and their experiences with losing someone are so different, that they were in your life for a reason, even if you're not happy with that reason, or not happy with the outcome. I do think that they are in your life to teach you some lessons, and their loss is part of the lesson to grow into the person you're meant to be. And, you know, even this podcast, would it exist if you hadn't gone through that? Would you have had these conversations with hundreds of people and spoken about their grief and helped them process and helped all the other people? Like, it's part of it. You're supposed to go through the motions. You're supposed to hurt. You're supposed to heal. You're supposed to connect with other people and become a different person from it. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. I think if you shift that mindset that this was supposed to happen, and I'm going to not get something, but learn and evolve and develop from this, I think you can certainly, it won't completely heal the grief, but it would certainly soften the
Right.
blow. Yeah.
I mean, and especially I think when you're in the beginning stages of grief too, you don't want to hear that, because it's
Yeah.
like, how anything positive come from this event, you know, like how dare anyone even say that? And I've seen firsthand and all the time where I want to give that advice. Like, I don't want to share anyone else's story, but a friend of mine had lost her son to suicide. And there was that cloud of, you know, anger and depression. How can anyone find something good from this? I don't want to hear that from anybody. But she has gone to create a nonprofit and she's advocating for other children and their parents. And it's like, she's connected to spirit to the point where she's gotten closure with her experience. But some things I guess you just can't say, but the advice would
Yeah.
be it's meant to help you in some way, shape, or form, even though it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. You're right. And I think with those situations, if you can see someone else that have come out of the back of a similar situation, and again, that's part of the premise of this podcast, if you can connect to people that have gone through a similar experience, whether it be, and some of those discussions that we've had have been just, I think prior to having those conversations with people, I would have thought unimaginable. How do you come back from that? I would be a ball of,
Right.
grief, mess, whatever, and not, not getting up and whatever the case may
Never
be.
come out of
But
that hole ever again.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially with, child loss and
Yeah.
suicide,
Mm.
spousal, child suicide, all the really, really, and not to discount other people that have lost people for, for cancer and accidents and whatever else, but just those particularly tough situations where you think, oh, there's no coming back from this. But to have those people and listen to their stories where they have created, non-profit organizations, or they're creating these beautiful communities where they're helping other people that have lost their spouses to suicide or whatever it might be, is just so beautiful to see. So I think you're right. I think there's moments where you can't necessarily say it, but if you can maybe point those people in the direction of people they might relate to that have gone through something else. Because I think if you're the person saying, something good will come of this. You'll be fine.
Oh,
Look at you and
gosh.
go, how the hell do you know? You haven't been through
Right.
it.
Catch me in 5 years when I like get out of this bed, maybe.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Rayven,
but I
last
think,
question for you for the main part of the podcast that we always ask people. Sometimes the most difficult question, depending again what stage of the grief journey you're on. If Kiki was in front of you today, your beloved grandmother, what would you say to her?
I think it's probably what you say and what everyone says. I love you. I hope that I'm making you proud. Is that what everyone says? Let
Probably the
me,
default. Look, a lot of people do say that, but yeah, I guess taking from that, some people go a little bit further into it. Other people just leave it as "thank you, I love you," and that's okay. It's just
yeah,
interesting to hear. I guess it's based on your relationship and what you
right.
think you would say at the time, and we don't know for sure if she was. You could say something completely different, but yeah, it's just interesting. We find to hear what people would say.
Yeah, I think I'll try to go layer deeper. Let me see.
Okay.
Because there is so much that we don't access in our day-to-day life, it's just knee-jerk reactions. But
Look, and I'm sure there's people that have been on to think, post hearing, what they would have said, have probably thought, oh, why didn't I say this and that and
right.
whatever else.
There's a whole
There's no
speech over
perfect
here.
answer. Yeah, exactly. You've got a split second just to try and come
Right.
up with something. Yeah.
No, but I think, growing up in the time that she did in her generation, that there were a lot of limitations for humans just on a whole level, but also for women and for immigrants, and she didn't have her own bank account. She didn't have autonomy and freedom ever since she was like the age of 10, I guess, and even before that. So I would want her to know that I'm pursuing freedom, and I hope she kind of lives through me. I hope she can live vicariously and experience things that she didn't have the ability to, and choices that she wasn't allowed to make for herself. And I think breaking that generational cycle of, for me, it was normalizing abuse because I'd seen it in so many previous generations, and I think she had too. So I think she'd be proud of that. And I would just want to take her along for the ride.
Yeah.
She's not leaving my side. She'll come and be passenger princess.
Yeah. Well, Rayven, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing stories and memories of your grandmother, Kiki. I'm sure that the conversation will help someone out there. And as we've said throughout this podcast, if we can help one person out there that's dealing with grief, whether it be a loss of a grandmother or someone else, and they can relate to your story, then we've been a success. So thank you very much for joining. I've enjoyed, and I'm sure the boys will, when they hear it back, have enjoyed having you on.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it.
The Remembering Them podcast is created for entertainment purposes. Mark, Ryan, and Luke are not licensed mental health professionals. If you would like to discuss your mental well-being, several resources are available in Australia. Information about these services are available in the podcast notes. Please take the time to contact your loved one today and tell them how much you appreciate and love them.